Welcome to the latest report about immigration, refugees, and citizenship. Canada's IRCC processing times and changes for PR cards, visitor visas, super visas, work permits, and study permits. In this video, we're here to share the newest information about how long it takes for different immigration applications to be done. Based on information collected in the past 6 months, these processing times are created to provide current and weekly estimates for how long it takes to process applications. It's important to understand that the time for processing starts when Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, receives your application. It ends when an immigration officer who is looking at your application makes a final decision. So while we start, please ensure you watch whole video to get full information. If you like what you hear, please show your support by clicking the like button and subscribing to Canada PR Harry channel. And make sure to turn on the notification bell so you get updates on time. Let's start by talking about how long it takes the IRCC to process applications for citizenship and PR cards. In the last week, there haven't been any changes in the time it takes to process applications for citizenship grants. This time period is now 18 months. The time it takes to process applications for citizenship certificates, which prove you're a citizen, is now 10 months. There haven't been any recent changes. If you're looking to restart your citizenship, the current processing time is 30 months, and this hasn't changed from last week. Now, let's move on to the time it takes to process applications for the economic class. Currently, it takes 5 months to process applications for the Canadian Experience Class, CEC. For the Federal Skilled Worker Program, FSWP, it also takes 5 months. But for the Federal Skilled Trades Program, FSTP, we don't have enough information to give you a specific time yet. For renunciation of citizenship, it currently takes 14 months to finish the process, and this time hasn't changed since last week. If someone is looking for citizenship records, it currently takes 15 months, and this time hasn't changed since last week either. Next, let's talk about how long it takes to get a Canadian passport. If you apply for a new passport in Canada and go in person to a Service Canada Centre for Passport Services, it will take about 10 business days to finish the process. But if you send in your application by mail to a Service Canada Centre, it will take around 20 business days to complete the process. The time it takes hasn't changed since last week. If you need your passport urgently while you're in Canada, you can get it in just 1 business day. And if you need it a bit faster, with express pickup, it will take from 2 to 9 business days. Now, let's move on to the time it takes for family sponsorship applications processed by IRCC. If your spouse or common law partner lives outside Canada, the time it takes depends on whether they're in Quebec or outside Quebec. If they're in Quebec, it takes 24 months. But if they're outside Quebec, it takes 13 months. If your spouse or partner lives inside Canada, the time is different again. If they're in Quebec, it takes 25 months. If they're outside Quebec, it takes 10 months. Now let's move on to the super visa for parents or grandparents. The time it takes to process this visa also changes based on the country you're applying from. Next, when it comes to extending your visit or getting a visitor record, it takes 92 days for online applications and 124 days for applications sent on paper. The time it takes for parents or grandparents living in Quebec to get their visa is 45 months, while for those living outside Quebec, it's 23 months. Shifting our focus, let's talk about getting permanent resident cards. If you need to renew or replace your PR card, it takes 94 days. But if you're applying for a new PR card, the current time it takes is 33 days. Now, let's discuss something important about processing times. For people applying through the Federal Self-Employed Program, it takes around 50 months for everything to be done. This hasn't changed from last week. Moving on, if you're thinking about the Atlantic Immigration Pilot, AIP, or the Startup Visa, it's important to know that both of these take some time to process. For AIP, it usually takes about 34 months. And for the Startup Visa, it takes around 37 months. These times haven't changed from last week either. Next, let's talk about work permits. If you're already in Canada and you want a work permit, the time it takes can be different depending on your situation and where you're from. But if you're outside Canada and applying online, it takes about 146 days to process your application. If you're sending in a paper application, it takes around 16 days. Lastly, let's look at how long it takes for temporary residence applications. If you want to visit Canada and you're not from Canada, the time it takes for your visitor visa to be processed can be different for each country. And if you're already in Canada and want to extend your stay, it takes about 17 days if you apply online and about 35 days if you send in a paper application. Moving forward, let's take a look at something important called the Provincial Nominee Program, PNP. When you apply through Express Entry, it usually takes about 9 months for everything to be done. But if you're not using Express Entry, it might take around 17 months. Now, let's talk about two different programs in Quebec. If you're a Quebec Skilled Worker, QSW, the process usually takes about 17 months. For Quebec Business Class, which is for people who want to do business in Quebec, it takes much longer, around 62 months. These times haven't changed from last week. Switching topics, let's talk about cases where people are in difficult situations and need special help. For these cases, it usually takes about 19 months for everything to be sorted out. If you're thinking about coming to Canada for a short time through the International Experience Canada program, the current season's processing time is about 11 weeks. Now, let's focus on study permits. If you want to study in Canada and you're not in Canada right now, it takes around 7 weeks to process your application. But if you're already in Canada and want to keep studying, it also takes about 7 weeks. And if you want to extend your study permit, it takes about 75 days if you apply online and about 125 days if you send in a paper application. Friends, please ensure to like and comment on the video and do subscribe to our channel Canada PR Harry if not yet done. You can also share the video with your friends, family or on various groups to spread the knowledge. Thank you for watching.